Hey, Mark, thank you so much for taking some time with me here today. I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit better, and I think you're going to have a really unique spin on just a lot of the insight and knowledge that we're going to learn from you here today. For simple introductions, why don't we just start out by kind of learning a little bit about you? And as I like to say, give me the story of Mark.
I've had a very interesting career. When I came out of MIT with a couple degrees in the 90s, I started as a software engineer. This was during the dot-com era. But I knew very early on that I wanted to become a CTO, a chief technology officer. I quickly understood that to be a successful CTO, it wasn't just about being the best engineer. There were a number of other skills: team building, leadership, communicating, negotiating. No one ever taught me these skills, so I had to develop them in myself. As I did so, I realized these skills are not just for the executives or not just for the top people in the company. They are for everyone, down to the most junior person. So I began training up my team. And as I was doing this, MIT, where I'd gone to school, had gotten similar feedback when talking to the companies who hire our students. They said, these are the skills we want to find, not just in your students, but in everyone we hire, both right out of college and in general. But we can't find these skills because no one else is teaching them. So MIT wanted to put together a program. It's now referred to as the Career Success Accelerator. And when I heard about this, I reached out. I said, hey, I've been working on these skills with my team. Can I be of any help? I said, yes, please come share. So I helped develop that program, and they invited me to teach. So I've had this dual career where I've been a CTO and I've built traditional startups and helped Fortune 500s who want to play startup. But I've had a parallel career as an instructor at MIT, and now the book and the speaking and everything that goes along with professional development in parallel to my CTO career.
I love that, and I think that's a really unique skill set. Kind of learning how to navigate and, as I would call it, level up in your career, and learn those intangibles that are so critical to finding your career path. Talk to me about it. Obviously, you have what's called the Career Toolkit. You have a book out there. You have an awesome blog, by the way, man. I typically don't say that, and I typically don't read blogs actually anymore. I'm mostly a podcast, YouTube type of guy, and actually found myself looking at a lot of your content. So just kind of talk to me about the Career Toolkit.
Well, thank you. The book, The Career Toolkit: Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You. The book is broken down into 10 chapters and 3 sections. Section 1 has stuff on your career. So how to create and execute a career plan, how to work effectively, things like managing your manager, understanding the corporate culture in which you work, dealing with corporate politics. Third chapter is on interviewing, little bit as a candidate, but more as a hiring person, because so many of us are involved hiring our peers, and yet no one actually trained us how to do that.
Hmm.
The second section, leadership and management skills. And those, again, are not just for people with certain titles, but everyone from day one as an individual contributor can benefit from having leadership and management skills. Then the third section, interpersonal dynamics, communication, negotiation, networking, and ethics. And what's really surprising, these skills, we've heard them all. They're not a surprise. Oh, wow, negotiating or networking. I never knew that was important. We've heard it, but no one taught us. And even for example, salespeople, who I know comprise most of your audience, very few have had formal negotiation training or formal networking training, but it's so critical to their careers.
Yeah, I absolutely. And when I kind of started doing my research on you and looking at all the content you put out there, there was a few things that kind of popped up that I was like, "Yep, that relates exactly back to sales." And the first one was networking. I actually have it right here: networking and communication. Those were the first two. I think in sales, it's critical that you have a great network. It's a lot of the times great salespeople just live and die by their network. Now that's good and bad, but an essential, the number one essential is communication. Talk to me kind of about how let's say, let's throw a hypothetical. You're new into your career, sales career, doesn't matter what you're doing. You are involved in, obviously, we communicate every day. You have to network to kind of to move up that ladder and also to generate your pipeline more. What are some kind of tips to the trade that you would recommend in the networking and communication realm?
Networking here is one of my biggest pet peeves. is that salespeople are constantly focused on the transaction, right? This is how people screw up networking. Our image of networking, of, oh, who's the best networker? What's the guy who walked into that conference or event and 30 minutes later, he comes back with 15 business cards? Like, oh, wow, that guy's great. But here's the thing. Let's think about the digital version of that. We have people today saying, oh, I'm connected to all these people on LinkedIn. Look, all these people, I click connect and they connected back. And look at my network. Well, saying someone who connected to you on LinkedIn is in your network, that's like saying someone who swiped right on you on Tinder is now your significant other.
Yeah.
If I came to you and said, oh, look, this girl just swiped right on me. Look, we're going to get married. I said, Mark, hold on there. I think you're jumping the gun, right? She
Yeah, of
hasn't
course.
really committed to any type of relationship. She's just expressed some interest. But we do the same thing with our networking. I add this person on LinkedIn, or I got this person's business card. What you want to do, just like on Tinder, okay, well, now I have to build the relationship. That would be dating. I have to build the relationship with someone. I have to get to know them. Might not be dating, but it's meeting for coffee, it's keeping in touch. And so that's how we have to think of networking. The getting the card or adding on LinkedIn does not create your network. That's just step one of a longer process. And unfortunately, so many salespeople are focused on the transaction, on their monthly quota, their quarterly quota. It's just, hey, am I going to close a sale with you in the next month or two? Or if not, I don't have time to focus on you because I've got a quota to meet. Focus on long-term value because that will pay off in the end.
Long-term value, I think that's the key word there. And when if you're delivering long-term value, you are delivering genuine connection and intention. I mean, it's not easy. Like I always thought networking actually was kind of exhausting because you are investing a lot into a relationship that's pretty cold, that hopefully it goes somewhere, that it's a two-part relationship. It's a give and take relationship, and it's in the business sense, which can be a little bit more awkward sometimes because you're not, just talking about your everyday hobbies and interests and kids and whatnot. So I always thought it was exhausting. So if you're focused on long-term value, you have a solution you can sell. That's long-term value. It's just genuine intention, and I think that's really well said. From a communication standpoint, what are some just like general communication tips and tricks, or just value adds that you learned along the way that has really helped people kind of level up, just not throughout their career, but just with people in general?
It's to recognize that everyone has their own communication style, and it's important to match it. So we're going to go into a little bit of stereotypes. Engineers like myself, we tend to be quieter people. We're okay if there's a little bit of silence to think. Salespeople, and again, I'm generalizing, this isn't true of all engineers or salespeople. Salespeople tend to be pretty talkative people. And so what happens is when there's a little silence, the salesperson wants to fill the silence and they just keep talking. In fact, to certain people, to introverts, to engineers, no, stop talking. I want to think, I want to reflect on this. And you're actually interrupting my train of thought. And recognizing that my communication style might be, there's going to be 30 seconds of silence while I think. You have to get comfortable with that. And it's funny, I know some of the salespeople I've worked with would train people, you have to get comfortable in many situations as a salesperson, right? Doing that cold call. And they would do techniques like walk into an elevator and turn around and stare at everyone, right? It's like an old sales technique, right? It's super
Yeah.
awkward to stare there, but we don't train people how to just sit there with silence. So
Mhm.
that's just one example of how our communication styles might differ, but recognize the communication style of with whom you're engaging and try to match that.
Gosh, I love that. I haven't heard that yet on the show. We're 50 plus episodes in. Just learn and almost train yourself how to sit in silence. Man, I think that's well said. I know, well, I actually went through a negotiation course a few years ago, Chris Voss, and I recommend anyone follow Chris Voss. And one of the things that he says is mirror your prospect, ask a question, and then shut up. And stay silent, even if it's for 30, 40, 50 seconds, which doesn't sound like that long. But if we were to sit here in silence for 50 seconds, we're both feeling something. And
10
it's,
seconds sounds like an eternity.
It's a hard thing to do. Absolutely. Learn to sit in silence. Train yourself that. How do you? I'm just curious. How do you kind of teach that to your team?
It's first being aware of it. Right? If you've never heard this before, you were never even going to recognize some people might like silence, or that when you're being quiet, it's because you're thinking and not just, well, you don't have anything to say, or you're confused and not sure what to say. No, you might just be reflecting and thinking. Okay, so first I recognize that. Now that I identify it, I liken it to when you're doing public speaking. When we teach public speaking, we teach people, so many people say, very common speaking. Most people aren't even aware of it. So first thing you do is you train them to be aware of it. And as I'm speaking, I realize that I'm saying it. Okay, now I'm going to recognize that and be conscious about trying to remove it from my speech. So it's the same thing here. It's first being aware of it. Silence, in this case, is something that happens. Then you recognize it's important. And now when I hear it, I might realize we were talking, I finished speaking. Oh, but I'm just going to fill that space. Ooh, wait. Oh, shoot. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just been quiet a little more. But okay, I'm at least more conscious of it. Next time, I'll try to wait a little longer. I'll try to be better. And so it just comes with the recognition and practice.
I love that. And I think that's well said and something that, maybe I'm just thinking now I need to be more aware of and need to have these discussions amongst our sales reps because it's so important when you're sitting in silence, you also have the opportunity to listen, which is critical in sale. So you talk about essential tools for success you're not taught. I don't know if you call that your tagline or I just kept seeing this throughout your content everywhere. What are some of those essential tools?
So these are the ones that relate to each of the chapters: creating a career plan, interviewing other people, leading, managing both the people side of management and the process side of it, understanding how to work effectively, things like fitting into your corporate culture, understanding your manager style, the negotiating, interviewing, communication, and ethics.
Okay, I think those are all key pieces to the puzzle for sure. I want to hone in on kind of managers and management for a minute. A lot of people listening right now are either early on in their sales career and they deal with the sales manager, or we have a lot of sales managers that manage people. So I guess let's take it from two perspectives here. Let's take it from the early days, learning your manager, learning their management style. What are some ways, like, what are some things you should look for? Just kind of paint the picture of like, what are some things we should be aware of as a new employee being developing that relationship with a sales manager?
With communication, there were many things, and we gave the example of just being in silence, right? It's one small example, but once you get the concept, you can apply it to other things. So let's do a small example with management. Consider your manager. When you want to propose something to your manager, what is the right way to do it? Some people prefer, oh, come into my office, give me the idea, pitch me, and let's talk about it. Other managers may prefer, write it up, send it to me, let me think about it. I'm going to read through it, think about it, and then we'll discuss it. It's small, it's subtle, but it's an important difference because the person who wants to take the idea and think about and reflect on it before we talk about it, if you walk into my office and that was my style, okay, you're hitting me with all this stuff and go, okay, yeah, this sounds interesting, but I want to think about it before making a decision. And I feel almost pressured that you're hitting me this way. On the other hand, if I want to talk face to face and you email me this thing, okay, great, but like let's talk it out. I really want to dynamically think through it with you, and I don't have that chance. And now it doesn't mean your idea is instantly blown, but we all know as salespeople, right? And you're selling an idea here. We all know as salespeople, there's a right way and wrong way to approach each person, right? You don't call someone who prefers emails and vice versa. Same thing with your manager. You want to figure out their style and match that.
Great stuff there. I think delivery is so key and probably not spoken about enough in the sales world. We'll talk about tactics that work with cold outreach and things like that, but really it's asking the question of not what works as a general consensus across the board, what works for your target prospect, your person, and then relating back to your actual company, what actually works communication wise, style wise with your manager. I love that. On the
And
flip
here's the
side,
thing, with our cold prospects, but I don't know who that random person is that I got from the lead. I don't know her style, but my manager, I know her style. I've talked to her enough that if I pay attention, it's all there in front of me and I can figure it out. You basically have your sales prospect, your manager, who's given you all this information if you'll only pay attention.
yeah, man, I love that. Just really learning the lay of the land and then playing to their style, which will ultimately, develop that relationship even stronger. On the flip side of that, you're a new manager. All of a sudden, you're managing 3, 4, 40 people, doesn't matter. What are some things that you would recommend for a manager to really learn about their team to strengthen that relationship and strengthen that communication? I almost assume it's very similar as someone new learning their manager. Is it the same? Is it crazy to think that it's similar to, hey, we just got to learn each individual?
It's certainly similar. Now, if you're managing a team of 40 people, you're not going to say, oh, well, with Chris, I want to go and have the one-on-one conversation, but with Sam, I want to send the email. No, you don't have time for that. They should adapt a little more to your style. But very importantly, as a manager, you need to understand the motivation of different people. Now, one of my head of sales, he used to like to say, salespeople are coin operated. Right? They're all motivated by money. And that may be true. Certainly, salespeople are inherently motivated by the bonus structure they have. That's why we set up with commissions and bonuses. But there might be other motivations people have as well. And in the book, I point a lot of different motivational theories in the management chapter and go through it to recognize that different people all have different components of what motivates us. And so I might have to just say something to the whole team. And I do my, say, quarterly team meeting and talk about the direction we're going in and big ideas. But I'm also likely to have one-on-ones with people, or even after that meeting, I might follow up with you individually to see how did that resonate with you? How are you feeling about it? And there I need to now connect it to your individual motivations if I want to be a good leader and manager for you.
100% agree on finding out the motivations. And what we've actually come to learn just from having multiple conversations with sales managers and VPs, and we have a small and dynamic sales team ourselves, is money is either an important thing or it's everything. And actually, to salespeople, I found it's just an important thing. It's an important thing to all of us. It's an essential to survive, succeed, so on and so forth. Just here recently with our team, we said, hey, we can either give you a different commission structure, higher incentives from a payout standpoint, or we can give you like more flexibility and a quote unquote free time. So if you hit quota on Wednesday, take the rest of the week off. Well, all of a sudden they were hitting quota on Thursday and they've been doing having 3 day weekends essentially, or maybe even 3.5 day weekends. So free time and just buying back time was more valuable than, more money in that case, which I think is awesome. And I think it goes back to what motivates them. Well, flexibility and freedom motivate them. It's what motivates me. Now, the double-edged sword there is you need money to accomplish a lot of that. So I think that's really well said. I
You've
have
hit,
go
you've hit one of the secrets of the great resignation. So right now people are saying, what's happening? So many people are resigning. Why don't they want to stay? It's because the prior contract of you work for me and I give you money is no longer sufficient for many people. Money is an important piece, as you noted, but for some, it's that flexibility, whether it's taking Friday off or just being able to work from home a certain number of days, or having flexibility if I've got kids, I need to pick them up in the afternoon, but do work at night. Or for some saying, hey, at 6 o'clock, phone off unless there's an emergency. For other people, it's engagement and development. It's knowing their companies care about them, or it's wanting to grow professionally and getting that support from the company. So it's no longer just that coin operation. I give you money to do the work. And so understanding what specifically people want is very critical. Now, one caveat with this is you have to be careful, of course. If I give you Fridays off and I give someone else, let's say a woman, more money, well, wait, there's a potential liability here that people can say, oh, you're treating the genders differently. And so we do have to temper some of that with I have to be equitable to all people. So just run it by your HR or legal department before you do, but certainly on a one-on-one basis. And we just talk about how I inspire you and get you connected without necessarily what I'm physically handing you as a reward. Certainly there I have to understand your motivations.
Absolutely. Would you say that we're in like one of the most unique times right now, in terms of just like careers and people looking to advance their careers? I feel like for the first time ever, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, that like employees have a lot of leverage right now, a ton of leverage with the past 18 months. Companies have had to learn how to evolve and adapt to work more remote, be more flexible due to COVID. And now there's like this hiring shortage. Companies are having a really tough time retaining and hiring really great employees. I'm just curious to get your thoughts, someone that's really studied the field of just like career advancement. Um, what, how do you see the current, I guess I don't even want to say industry, but world and employees and kind of that new hiring style currently being, and where do you see it kind of evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Great question. Certainly in tech, in my field, we've seen this for a while. We saw this at the end of the dot-com era. I remember it was desperate trying to find people in January, February of 2000. We've even the last few years pre-COVID just had such a shortage of qualified engineers. We've all been desperate, all been trying to hire them. But now it's very widespread. Now we see it across all industries, across all jobs. Now, one thing to remember for everyone enjoying this moment, it was great being a software engineer in February of 2000. It was not so great in April of 2000 because we had the dot-com crash in March. And I remember people who were turning me down because they could just get so much more money from another company would come back to me literally a few weeks later after the crash and that company had layoffs. Came back and say, hey, is that job still available? So you have to recognize that at some point, the tide will turn. If we get into a recession, a lot of that's going to disappear. What I'm hoping, this is probably the biggest labor movement since the early 1900s, when we had the original labor movement, the people who pushed for the 40-hour work week, the 5-day week, safety protocols. Now it's almost, I'd liken it to almost mental health and mental safety. We're not worried about our arm getting ripped off, but we are saying, I'm tired of working till 8 or 9 o'clock every night and having to answer the phone when it rings. And I just need a different balance. So that's what people are pushing for. And if we can do enough of that for the next 2, say 3 years, it will institutionalize and become normal. If we drop into recession, let's say in 4 months, we get a major recession. I don't see any reason that would happen, but if it does, then all of a sudden it could swing back and everyone's desperate for a job. So I think the key thing, as long as things stay good, and it looks like they will from a labor perspective, and as long as we meaning all of us who take jobs, start to say, okay, that's great. Thank you for offering that salary, that compensation structure. But let's also talk about the work-life balance. Let's talk about how you're going to develop me. Let's talk about the engagement or even the impact that you have on society or the industry, right? Maybe ESG. As long as we express those as important values to attract and retain us, if we can keep that up for about 2 or 3 years, that will institutionalize and change the nature of the employer-employee relationship.
Those are some really interesting thoughts. And yeah, overall, I would tend to agree. I definitely think there's been a big shift from, okay, yeah, physically I'm in a safer environment, but how am I mentally? And I mean, a reason for me getting out of the corporate world 7 years ago was because I was feeling just depressed every time I walked into my cubicle. It felt like a jail cell, and the corporate environment was Well, if you say anything about it, you're weak. Right? It was still very like 1980s, I don't know, just sales floor style. So I definitely do believe that shift has happened. Two last things for you here, Mark. One is more a question about a piece of content you put out that I'm curious just to get your breakdown on. And then the second one is a question that we give, a random question we give to every guest on the show. The first one being, you have a really interesting headline. This is a blog I actually didn't read. It caught my attention about 15 minutes before this conversation here. How to earn $30,000 in 30 minutes or less. I believe this probably has to do with negotiation, but you tell me how to earn $30,000 in 30 minutes or less.
It does. And that's obviously kind of a clickbait headline, which I hate using, but we all know you got to do that
Of
email
course.
subject line, that clickbait.
Of course.
Let's consider the following. Consider that you are taking a job, you're 25 years old, and you have a job offer. Forget about commission structures and bonus. Let's just talk
Sure.
about your base job offer for $60,000. But instead of taking it as is, you negotiate that job offer and you convince them to give you 61,000. That's not a big increase, right? That's pretty small, slightly less than 2%. And so you get 61,000 and you do nothing else in your career. You sit in that job for the next 30 years till you retire. And that's an early retirement, but let's say you sit there for 30 years. You've just earned $1,000 more a year for 30 years. One 5-minute negotiation just got you $30,000.
Hmm.
Now, of course, astute listeners are saying, but wait a second, I'm never going to stay in a job for 30 years. And you're right, you're going to have other jobs, promotions, raises. Some of those raises will be for more than just $1,000. In fact, if you learn to negotiate, you can add tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars to your lifetime earning. And now, of course, we're just talking about with your base. In fact, people who negotiate regularly, and obviously salespeople do, can come up with better sales, more sales. I don't just mean, oh, I got the customer to pay 2% more. You might find more creative solutions are going to close more sales for you, even if it's at the same rate as what you normally charge. We, of course, negotiate all the time with our coworkers, right? It's not about money that's changing, but it's about finding more effective solutions. So learning to negotiate is going to add a massive ROI to your lifetime earning. When you think about it this way, why haven't you taken a negotiation course or read a book, mine or one of the others? You think about that investment, $30, a couple hours. My God, you're going to earn this back quickly. And by the way, here's another secret. I use negotiation as the example because it's easier to do the math, right? We go $1,000, 30 years, got it. The same is true if you get a little better at leading, at communicating, at building your network. No one's going to say, oh, you're a better networker, here's $1,000 more. But that better network will lead to more job opportunities, more sales. It will result in the same outcome, just through a slightly different path. So invest even just a little bit in all these skills, and you're going to get that massive ROI.
Well said, and I definitely back that fully, especially from a leadership standpoint. You develop leadership skills, you're going to get paid more for those skills. You invest more in your network, you're going to meet someone that opens a door, holy shit, we just landed where I never thought I'd land, right? And then I wish I knew some of this when I took my first job out of just when I was a young guy coming up, right? I was going to say out of college, but I didn't finish college. I remember taking a job for $40,000 a year, and man, I thought I hit a home run. I called my then girlfriend, now wife at the time, like, holy cow, it's 39. It was actually $39,000 a year. I said yes instantly, and I became friends with a lot of people at that first job, and they said, we cannot believe you took that offer. We were willing to negotiate another $20,000. Let me tell you, I never earned that $20,000 while working at that job, right? But if I would have just asked that question, taken some of Mark's advice, maybe read the Career Toolkit, I would have grabbed some more piece of that pie. Mark, this has been awesome, man. Real fast, I'm going to ask you. We have a random 2 decks of cards here, black deck, white deck. No difference in the random questions. choose what color of deck you'd like to pull a random question from, and anything's on the table, and we pull and we ask. So, would you like to pull a random question from the white deck or the black deck?
Since it was recently Black Friday when we're recording this, let's go with the black deck.
Okay, there we go. Um, let's go ahead and. Whew, this is a deep one, man. If you were to die tomorrow, what little thing would you regret not doing?
Oh, for me, that's easy. That I am not yet married. I very much want to get married and have a family, and that's number one on my priority list.
Very cool, man. And that's, yeah, it's a huge legacy thing, and definitely one that's challenging but rewarding. Well, dude, you were very clear on that answer. A lot of people aren't that clear on that answer. So, very cool, man. Hey, Mark, I love this conversation. I think it was very valuable. I think you have awesome content, and I don't just say that. I don't say that to all my guests. But I think you have a lot to bring to the table. Where can people find you? And everything you mentioned here, we'll link up in the show notes and put in our newsletter. But where can people find you, Mark, and learn more about you?
Well, thank you for that compliment. You can go to my website, thecareertoolkitbook.com. There you can, of course, learn more about the book, see where to buy it, Amazon, other places. You can get in touch with me or follow me on social media. You can follow along the blog posts I put out every week. You can download the free app. There's a free app for the Android and iPhone stores, and I link to it from the website. There's also an entire resources page where I list other books that I recommend, some that I reference in mine. I link to some free tools online, and there's a number of free downloads, including a program for how you can develop these skills at your company for free. So all of this is available at thecareertoolkitbook.com.
Awesome. And I'm not kidding, guys. Mark puts out some great content and puts it out continuously. So go ahead and check him out at thecareertoolkitbook.com. And Mark, would love to have you back on again here in the future. I just think like navigating careers it's a tricky subject, right? It's a hard thing to do and it's critical. So thank you again and look forward to future conversations.
Great. Thanks for having me on the show.